All right, so I'm going to go in and get started. My name is Robert Melendez. I am from Irvine Valley College, and I am a counselor at Irvine Valley College. And I work pretty closely with Tustin Unified in general, and in particular, Beckman High School with the early college program. So I've been kind of a part of early college and dual enrollment as a whole with Tustin Unified for probably close to 8 or 9 years now, I would say. And what we're going to talk about today is kind of the big umbrella of what is dual enrollment. And then at the end, I will kind of bring up what we kind of call ad hoc enrollment, which is technically outside of dual enrollment, but we do want to kind of focus our talks today on dual enrollment because that probably has the most opportunities for your children. So first thing I want to do is just talk about the fact that we do have a long history of success when it comes to the efforts that we've been doing. And dual enrollment is not something that's brand new. It is something that's been kind of done in one way, one form or fashion for probably decades, to be honest with you. What's been happening as of late, though, is that there's a lot more structure to the dual enrollment programs. And that's for a lot of different reasons, but I would say one of the biggest is just the California legislature kind of writing different regulations and different rules in how the credits can count, and really, in essence, how dual enrollment can really benefit both the high school and the community college or university partner. So I think that's really kind of opened up the floodgates for these type of programs that I think really is a benefit to the student in the long run. And when you look at just what we've done for students through dual enrollment type programs, of course, the students are able to get units, credits as they relate for high school or for college and university potentially one day. But also we have programs that have gotten students certificates, and certificates are more like job prep type programs, very specific skill sets like entrepreneurship, accounting, things like that, to even associate degrees. And associate degrees run the gambit of the type of associate's degree students can get. But associate degrees are 2-year degrees in which they are able to receive from the community college. So we've had, a good number of students, especially in the past 10 years or so, actually able to get even an associate's degree. And that's about 2 years worth of education in college. So that is amazing, number one. But number two, very beneficial when you look at how that helps the student down the road once they get to the university, because they're that much closer to being completed and done. And then as we look at some of the benefits, probably one of the big ones that kind of comes to mind is probably the fact that they get credit on both sides of the aisle. They get it for high school. And a lot of times when students do dual enrollment programs, especially a good number of those college courses, they end up having a good amount of credits on the high school side. And then of course it gets them a little of a head start on the college side with the additional units. And this next one kind of probably gears more towards the parents, although the students I'm sure appreciate it too, but it saves costs. Because one thing with any of our, what we would call K-12 programs, that's basically any student in high school down that takes a community college course, those courses, the registration is waived if they are a part of a high school or lower. And in essence, the student really gets to have the class for free. And that is written into state law. So of course, that's California tax dollars kind of working for you very well there, but it's a way to really get a good number of units taken care of and at a very, if not zero cost basis. And then the other thing is just kind of the expanded learning opportunities that doing something like a dual enrollment program would provide students. So, high school has a lot of great opportunities. High school has APs, which, challenge students, honors that challenge students, even IB programs. But, as much as those programs are great, they're not college courses, right? So, and the variety of college courses that you can get at a community college, let alone a university. So this really gives the student the opportunity to start being able to have a little bit more diversity in the education and kind of the different topics that's discovered and what discussed. And then what I always like to talk about is the drilling down of the topics too, because you might be able to more specifically talk about, you know, not just general psychology like you would in high school, but now you're able to talk about specifically child psychology for a whole class, abnormal psychology, assessment testing in psychology. So those are the sorts of things in which a student could actually kind of really take advantage of, really kind of digging deeper into that material and even exploring some different options potentially for them for a major, and then of course for a career down the road too. So I think those are some of the big, huge benefits when we look at why a student would consider not only a community college course, but just a dual enrollment course too. And when we look at the current offerings, this is what we're looking at kind of this academic year mainly, but also kind of taking a look at next academic year with a couple of different programs there. So of course we have the early college pathway, which is at Beckman High School. That is a 4-year program. So you enter that program as a freshman to Beckman. And through that program, students get pretty close to 2 full years worth of a college education. They are a little short, but a lot of times students will take APs or additional college courses while they're in the early college pathway. And with that, they would end up getting that 60 units. And 60 units is kind of a magic number when you talk about number of units in college, because that's what gives them basically the junior level standing. So especially at the UC and the Cal State, students are able to walk in from a unit standpoint after completing the early college pathway, a lot of times as juniors. So that's currently at Beckman High School. We have a new program, the Human Development Pathway, and those are human development courses that are going to lead to a certificate at Tustin High School. So of course, with lots of different things that happened with COVID, this was unfortunately one of the items in which got pushed back as far as a start. We were supposed to start this year, fall of 2020. But of course, because of COVID, we decided to push it back. And hopefully that program should have no problem starting up at Tustin High School in fall of 21. So that's human development courses, child development courses. We also have entrepreneurship pathway at Beckman and Foothill High School. This mainly includes entrepreneurship classes, but even some management courses in addition to that. So, you know, the idea here is kind of the creativity, the kind of entrepreneurship thoughts and mindset is created and cultivated in those classes to really kind of get the student kind of thinking outside of the box of, you know, how can I make this a business? How can I make this something more than just kind of me working in a career? So it really kind of takes them to the next step there. We also have a sign language pathway. So there's a couple of courses potentially down the road leading to a certificate, and that is at Tustin and Foothill High School. We have a kinesiology pathway at Beckman High School. We got a dance and communication courses at Beckman, Foothill, and Tustin. We offer counseling courses with Hillview High School. We unfortunately have not been able to do that for the last 2 years for, you know, actually a couple of different reasons. This year, mainly because of COVID, last year because we were not able to get the number of students we needed for the class. But we hope to restart that in spring of 2022 if everything kind of goes right. And then, of course, the newest program out there and school out there, Legacy Magnet with Tustin Unified. As of right now, we have communications and an entrepreneurship pathway. And those of you that know of the Legacy Magnet know that, you know, it's a pretty innovative program what they've done there. And what they're doing is kind of interweaving some different programs at the community college into the curriculum there through middle school on up. I believe middle school is when they first start taking classes through dual enrollment with IVC. So I imagine that that is going to grow the number of pathways we have with Legacy Magnet, but as of right now, it's really that communications and the entrepreneurship. So I know there might be questions as it relates to this. If you have some questions, please go ahead and just raise your hand, and of course I could go ahead answer those questions, but I will leave time at the end to go ahead and talk about any of this. And of course, I can come back to this slide if needed too. So the one thing that we want to talk about too is that I think dual enrollment is, well, dual enrollment is available for any and all students. Dual enrollment is really suggested for those students that really kind of need the next level of kind of challenge or need a change of pace or a change of environment with their educational learning and experience. So when we look at what a student really needs to be able to do to be successful, because we haven't gotten into this, but we will in a sec, we're talking about all the benefits, we're talking about all the great things that dual enrollment gives you as not only a student, but parents. You have to remember these are college courses. So these aren't college courses that are kind of scaled back for a high school population. These are college courses that are available to high school students. And that's a period, end of story. So there is no changing of curriculum just because it's for a high school audience. In order for us to not only keep our accreditation, but our articulation, most importantly, and that's the acceptance of our classes to the universities, we have to make sure we have a standard kind of level to the courses and the way it's offered. So that's really important. And if we didn't do that, we could lose how those classes actually count for our students. So keeping that in mind, you're basically taking a college course while in high school. So that naturally means that we need to have a couple of different things as far as traits and things like that in order to be successful. So the first one is to have good time management, priority management, and study skills. So that's going to be key. So we need to make sure that student is a self-advocate, self-motivated, and of course is mature for not only the fact that they're going to be taking college courses, but potentially because of some of the content that may be in the college courses too, depending on the class. So these are all things we want to consider. So again, going back to the benefits, from a parent standpoint, a lot of times they're going to see, hey, this is an opportunity for me to save some time. Sorry about that. This opportunity to save money, save time, but this is also an opportunity for my son or daughter to actually be able to get the content they need and desire within their classes. But with that, we need to understand we do it for the right reason, right? So that reason really kind of comes down to being able to be successful in the class and know that they're doing it for the right reason. So that is what we're looking at in desired student qualities. Other things to consider, and this is something that I think is very important to kind of think about, is that all grades will show up on a college transcript. So when you actually look at how these classes work, you're going to have dual enrollment work not only to show up on the high school transcript, but it's also going to show up distinctively and separately on a college transcript. So what I mean is that no matter how the high school uses the credit, this student always has a college transcript with college grades. So this is obviously a benefit as far as units and consideration there, but it's also something that could hurt the student if the student does not do as well in those college courses. So I know as a counselor, sometimes what I'll see is students take courses while they're in high school. They don't do as well as they would have hoped. And then once they get to college, the idea is like, well, I took that in high school, it really doesn't count, right? It's not, as, at the same level as the courses I take now. Unfortunately, that's not the case. If a student takes a college course, they've taken a college course, no matter at what age or what level they took it. So when you think about it in that way, this college course is going to follow them forever. And when they apply to universities, when they apply to any graduate programs even, this transcript is going to be asked for because they're going to ask the institutions for any and all college work that's been done. So again, this isn't to scare a student or a parent away from the program, but to kind of really give the reality of what that program is and to make sure we're, again, doing it for the right reason. We kind of talked about this other piece already. It's kind of the rigor. So again, remember, there is going to be the same rigor expectations for the students in that college course, no matter if they're in high school or if they are in college. So that does not change. And then FERPA is something we will actually talk a little bit more about, but ultimately just know that that is going to limit the parent or guardian's access to the student's records and ability to communicate with professors. And that is very different, obviously, than it is in high school and even lower. So the first thing before we get to FERPA is I want to kind of talk about accommodation students with IEPs and 504 plans. So I know that as students go through their middle school, high school careers, they may or may not actually have these plans written for them, accommodations given to them. And what we need to know is that those 504 plans, those IEP plans, obviously work for the high school courses, but they do not work for the college courses. And it's not that services aren't provided. It's just that for services within the community college class in the IVC course, the student is going to have to request those services separately from our DSPS program. So that is our Disabled Students Programs and Services, DSPS, and that is something that the student can go ahead and try to get at any point. So if they want to get on that early and try to be able to get those services from day one of the class, which would be recommended, they could definitely do that. They reach out to our DSPS office. At that point, they can then go ahead and meet with the counselor and get any services that may be needed in order to be successful in that class. And then also at any point within the class, they could also go ahead and try to receive those services. But like with anything, there's sometimes a wait time to get the appointment. And then of course, once the appointment's done, to communicate that to the professor can at times be a week or so. So if you really want to take advantage of these accommodations, you really do want to get in early, meet with the IVC DSPS counselor early, and really get those accommodations kind of down so that way the student is able to take advantage of that down the road. So what services are actually offered by DSPS? So when you look at it, we do offer a lot of the same services in which you probably would be able to get from a 504 or IEP plan with the high school courses. Of course, we have adaptive media, we have additional counseling. Some of the bigger things are we can get note-taking assistance for the student. We can get also extended time on tests and assignments for the student, potentially test proctoring. That's really important if a student needs a distraction-free environment that we can go ahead and provide and get that for the student also. And then the other thing is just the additional equipment that we may be able to get. One of the popular things that we do with DSPS students with the service and equipment is around the kind of voice pens that they have now, the recording pens. So those are really kind of great for students, especially who need a little bit more time to kind of be able to take the notes, because it records the lecture. It also keeps in mind where the student is in taking their notes, and they're able to kind of play back specifically where their notes are for that, that lecture. So that comes out to be very handy for students. Okay, so I see a couple questions in the chat. I'm going to go through the rest of the IEP stuff first and FERPA, and then I'll come back to those questions. So then the next thing is FERPA. So FERPA stands for the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So right now, FERPA is at the high school level, but the way it works for high school and lower is different once the student gets into college. Now, I know that the idea is probably in a parent's or a guardian's mind to where, yeah, but they're not an adult yet, right? So if my son or daughter, is looking as a freshman, sophomore, or wherever in high school, and they take a college course, they're under 18, I should still retain all the rights that I normally have for that I have in high school. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The way the law is written, once the student becomes a college student, they are seen as a college student regardless of age in that college course. So what that means is a lot of those rights and responsibilities transfer from the parents, as it's been really at the high school and lower level, to the student. when everything kind of boils down, what it means is that really it's only the student that's able to get access to their information at the college, and it's only the student that could really have the communication with the professors. So, and I know this might be a bit of kind of a shock, or even might make you as a parent or guardian feel uncomfortable with like, oh, that seems a little scary for me. I'm going to have, you know, my child take care of that. Well, yes, and kind of going back to the desirable qualities and traits that we're looking for in order for a student to be successful, that's what we would really want from a student. We want students to be self-advocates. Now, are they going to be as comfortable being that self-advocate day one in the college course? Probably not, but that's where not only a counselor like myself at the college, the professor in the college class, and even you as the parent and guardian could try to foster that too. So there's nothing stopping you from getting that information through your child. You can still go ahead and get that information, right? If your son or daughter is struggling with anything as it relates with understanding assignments, things like that, instead of you as the parent or guardian relaying questions and information to the professor, you're now going to work to try to get the student to go ahead and formulate maybe that email, that voicemail, whatever it is, to the instructor at that point. So again, it's not that you're completely out of the situation and the communication. It's just that that communication really needs to happen between the student and the instructor, with you as their kind of advocate on the side, really working and helping support them to be that self-motivated advocate that they need to be in order to get whatever it is that they're requesting. So that's important to know. The only other thing that I like to talk about with Ferpa does relate with course content. Now with the dual enrollment classes, it will be a little different to where there will be no other college students in there. So for the true dual enrollment courses, that's only going to be high school students, and maybe high school students from other high schools too, depending on the program, but there won't be other college students. That is different if a student in high school is going to take a college course through ad hoc enrollment outside of dual enrollment. So a lot of these same kind of advantages, benefits, and everything still are there for those students. But the big difference is now instead of having a high school set of students in a college course, we now have, you know, a handful of high school students in a college course. So that's where sometimes, you know, other conversations, other content, other really discussions could happen that is, to be honest with you, amongst adults, college students. And we just need to know that as a student and as the parent or guardian of that student, you need to be ready for that. You need to be ready for the fact that those discussions, those talking points may come up, and that, you know, you're comfortable with that and you understand that too. And this is not something, again, to kind of scare off anyone, but to really just kind of make sure you understand really what kind of you're getting into when it comes to taking a college course, a dual enrollment course. And we've talked about this already. This is just the communication with the parents. So for the most part, that communication only happens with the child. In a case in which the parent really does need to get involved, is there a way to do that? Yes, but the student is going to have to relinquish their rights or at least approve that to happen. And that would not be what we want to use as the norm. Again, we need to kind of promote and get the students to be those self-advocates for themselves. So we really want to promote them kind of communicating with the professor, because honestly, they're the ones in the class with the professor. But in the case to where we may need to get involved as a parent or guardian, there is an avenue for that, but it would take some extra work and paperwork in order to make sure that gets done. And then now we're going to jump to questions, and perfect. I left a decent amount of time here because I'm feeling that we're going to probably need to go back to a couple of these things. So first thing here I see is, what college courses would be recommended we take in high school if we have heavy course load and other activities? So that is a great question, and it goes back to kind of what I was talking about before. So you need to make sure as a student, so I'm really talking to the students here, you need to make sure that you know what you're getting into and that you understand the kind of requirements that are going to be expected of you. There's no kind of easy courses that I would say, hey, you take X, Y, and Z. These are easy courses in college and you will be fine. Because number one, I would say the no college course is really easy per se. But number two, the instructor has a lot to do with kind of the content, the amount of work, kind of things like that kind of would make the course either easier or harder, depending on the student's point of view. So it is really hard to try to identify specific courses. What I would always tell a student to do is to look at courses in which they have interest in. I always say that it's not necessarily going to make the class easier, but it is going to make the class more interesting for a student if they're in content and curriculum in which the student really does have a desire to learn about. So that's always important for them to kind of consider and look at too. And then what I would also suggest is that the student enroll in the class if, because of those extra commitments, you realize really quickly that, hey, you know what, this is a little too much for me. It's not what I kind of expected. That's at the time point to where maybe you talk to a college counselor, your high school counselor, and then we look at what your options could be. We have everything, and these all have deadlines well before the end of the class, but there are things in which you could do to withdraw from the class and not get a grade in the class. It'll be a W, and a W just means withdraw, and it does not count for college credit, nor does it count for any GPA calculation. There's also something called a pass, no pass, which others know as credit, no credit. So a student could take a class in that way. And if they take it in that way, the benefit is that it will not affect their GPA. And this is really important if a student's trying to really maintain a high GPA, right? And then they start struggling, of course, and they think, oh, I might get a C in this course just because of the content, but I really want to get the units done and get kind of a head start. They could take it as a pass, no pass. And again, they get the college units if they pass the course with a P. But the GPA does not get affected in any way. And a P would be put on the student's transcript with anything with a C or better in the class. And then if the student got D or an F, it would be an NP, a no pass. And again, no kind of notation on the transcript at all as far as grades is concerned. It just shows an NP. Student wouldn't get credit for an NP, but the big advantage is they also don't get the GPA hit they normally would get if it was a D or an F. So hopefully that answers that question, Madison, but if you want to go deeper with that, let me know too. And then the only other question I have in here is, are RP courses the same as early college? So another good question. No, that the answer to that would be no. So usually ROP courses are not for college credit in any way. So when you look at ROP courses, they're very similar to some of the different kind of entry-level courses you could take in college at times, but they are not equivalent. And a lot of times the ROP courses are more hands-on and miss some of that theory in which is in a college course. A great example would be child development, right? ROP, a big kind of option for students with ROP is to be able to do that human development, child development. And when you do that through ROP, it's going to be a little bit of kind of coursework and classwork, but a big piece of it is them working in that field, actually working at a child care center, things like that. Whereas if they were to take the entry-level course at a college, there's some kind of work they have to do in order to do observations and things like that. But the core of the class is really in the classroom doing the curriculum and the content and the theory. So that's where it's a bit different. So ROP courses do not count as college courses outright, although there are some exceptions to that. So they're not the same as early college. So again, hopefully that answers that question. New question I just got on here. How many courses are high school students permitted to take per semester and over the entire duration of their high school careers? So I'm assuming, of course, that this is all in relation to college courses. So when you look at the number of units a student can take in college courses, as of right now, and there could be some exceptions to this, but as of right now, it would be 11.5 units. Now, I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to you when I talk about units, but think of units as credits. Most classes in a college would be, in a semester system at least, would be 3 units. So when we think about it from that standpoint, if most classes are 3 units, although we have a couple of 4 or 5 unit courses, then really the student's able to take about 3 courses, because that'd be about 9 units, if we're taking 3 unit courses. And that's per semester. We have 2 semesters in the year, and then we have summer. Same limit applies to all those different terms. And then as it relates to the question of duration of high school, so we have no limit as it relates to your total high school career. We only have a limit per semester. So if a student took 11 units per semester, not including summer, that would be what, 22, or 8, theoretically, they can get 44 units by the time that they actually transfer. And that's if they're getting the 11 units per semester. That would be 22. Actually, no, take it back, that would be actually 88 units. Yeah, 88 units that they could actually get. But again, that's a full load of 11 units, or close to a full load. Just to give you a comparison, our early college students who take courses every semester, they take 2 courses at 6 units until their senior year, which it bumps up a little bit, but 6 units per semester. So I'd probably never recommend that a student get that high consistently every semester, but that is what the unit limit is. Okay, is there other questions that anyone may have? Okay, if there's no other questions, and please, if you have more questions, put them in the chat. What I'd like to do is, because we really focused at dual enrollment programs, and again, the dual enrollment programs that you have available to you at TUSD Unified are all of these programs here. So what I want to bring up is what's called ad hoc enrollment. So dual enrollment is to where it is a program put on in partnership with IVC and TUSD Unified School District. That program, that class, more importantly, will be put on both transcripts. So that is the big kind of difference when it comes to a dual enrollment class versus an ad hoc enrollment for a student. So when you think about it from the standpoint of an ad hoc enrollment, students could actually take any and all courses they want at the college as long as they meet the prerequisites. And those courses will always live on a college transcript and may actually be able to be put on a high school transcript if approved by the high school. So again, dual enrollment, that automatically happens. Ad hoc enrollment, to where a student decides, you know what, my schedule's a little light this semester. I think I want to take a college course at IVC. I've been wanting to take I don't know, what might be a computer programming class specifically in Python, right? Introduction to Python, a computer language. They can then go ahead and come take that class at IVC, and that would be separate from dual enrollment. It's not dual enrollment. They're choosing to come do that on their own. There is a process they need to do. They need to not only do an application for the college, they need to get approval from the high school, and that's through the K-12 permission form, and then they would be able to enroll in the class. That being that ad hoc enrollment would allow the student into and then be able to enroll in the class. They do not have to pay for the class because, again, the tuition is waived, just like with dual enrollment. The big difference is that class is most likely going to be over in the college campus, and that class is going to be with other college students. So you're really looking at it from the standpoint of that student being in that college course and sitting there. Yeah, and that's where students can take more advanced biology, chemistry, computer science, like I said. When I work with students outside of dual enrollment, a lot of times they want to know, well, what courses should I take? I usually look at 2 different types of courses for students, either general education, which, for the most part, all students are going to have to do a part of their college anyway. So general education, like the arts, the humanities, the social sciences, those are all great classes to kind of look at. But on the other side, to allow students to actually start taking some courses in their major and to explore different major opportunities too. Because I know a lot of students think in high school they know what their major is, but we all know that that changes. And it most likely is going to change by the time they get to college, but even in college, it's going to change too, especially as they take those college courses. If they get a jump start of some of those college courses for a major now, they may actually be able to kind of refine and maybe explore some different major options for themselves early on. And that's important because then they're not using time and money once they're in college to kind of figure out what their major is. They're doing that for basically for free at the community college, exploring these different entry level introductory courses. So it is a great way to kind of explore different majors. And again, it's another great way to actually get content that the high schools aren't offering. So that's another advantage there too. Any other questions? Nothing new has come up in the chat here. Give me a second if there's no more. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the last slide, because on the bottom left there, you'll actually see my contact information. So if you heard anything here that you would like to ask more questions on, please feel free to reach out to me by email. It's rmelendez@ivc.edu. And then you can go ahead and take care of any of that, any questions you have, anything like that. All right, well, if there's no other questions, we can go ahead and end here. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.